But back to this afternoon now, and Once in a Lifetime brings us the story of a man who lived to tell the police of his own murder in the village that would not talk.
The date is March the 18th, 1934. The place, Bashall Eaves. In 12 minutes' time, this man will meet his murderer. James Dawson, farmer, bachelor, aged 46, quiet and reserved, the least likely candidate for murder, particularly a murder as bizarre as this one. Waiting for him in the shadows as James Dawson walked home alone, a person who was never identified. Coming from the opposite direction down the same country lane that night, a car carrying 3 men. One of them was called Tommy Kenyon. He worked for James Dawson and lived on the Dawson farm. 45 seconds before the murderer struck, the car passed James Dawson. He was seen in the headlights and recognized. James Dawson told the police the crime was committed at this precise spot, where he turned to walk past a neighbor's farm. And the life of James Dawson ended not with a bang, but with a click. Or so he said. He also said before he died 3 days later that he didn't bother to try and find out who had attacked him. Just carried on walking home to Bashall Hall Farm to have his supper. The body of James Dawson was laid to rest in the local churchyard, but not in peace. Any visitors to his grave today are more likely to be criminologists than relatives. For his death has become a classic murder mystery. One man who has been fascinated by the case for 10 years is Barry Shaw. He's the editor of a police newspaper who specializes in writing about crimes from the past. And this one brings him back to Bashall Eaves regularly.
At first sight, this looks a very simple murder, one that perhaps the local men could have solved in a day or two. But in actual fact, it turned out to be one of the most celebrated cases of all time. The top forensic men, the top detectives came up from London, and they went away as baffled as they were on the day they came. It's a curious case in many ways because, of course, the murdered man, James Dawson, lived to tell his version of how he was killed. He said he didn't even know he'd been shot. He said that he walked a half a mile with a great big bullet, something like this, a homemade bullet, curiously, embedded 3.5 inches deep into his back. That he walked home, had a good supper, went to bed, and didn't know anything about it until the following day. This must beg the question, was the murdered man telling the truth about his own murder? The main line in the local newspapers at the time was about the frustration of the police. It seems they had a pretty bad time. It's a strange place, Bashall Eaves. 2 or 3 miles from Clitheroe, it used to be in Yorkshire until they shifted it into Lancashire. They We've probably ignored that here, though, because the locals are real old-fashioned country folk who don't take kindly to interference from outsiders, either in 1934 or today.
We watched television making a film about
We know.
Bashall.
We've already had your man about 2 months ago.
That's it.
Which was it? Sam?
Yeah.
You know what I told you that day? Well, don't you think you've a cheek to come back?
Well, can you tell me about the Bashall Lee's murder?
I'd rather not say anything about it, because my relatives are involved in it.
You know what I told your mate there? No comment.
Okay.
It's an open verdict, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes,
it's
it
murder
is.
by a person or persons unknown.
Yeah, well, it's still an open verdict.
Yeah.
And as such can be rehashed any time.
But there's nothing I can tell you about it that isn't already known. And I don't really want to talk about it. I have nothing to say about it. I know nothing about it. You know, nothing whatsoever.
You're not easy people to talk to around here.
You're not on an easy subject, are you? With an open verdict on a murder case,
Right.
even 44 years after,
Well, I'm going to say
it's
40.
still open, isn't it?
The people involved are all dead now, unfortunately.
Are they? Are they?
No, nothing much has changed over the years in Bashall Leaves. It even looks the way it always did. But they're marvellous down-to-earth people, the locals. Tight-lipped maybe, but all right. But one man did turn up who was prepared to talk. Not a local, but someone who was very close to the affair back in 1934.
What was it like then?
Tommy Kenyon. He was in that car which passed James Dawson just before he said he was shot. Lived at the Dawson farm, went drinking with Dawson. In fact, had arranged to meet him at this pub on the night he was murdered. So this is the place where you would normally have met Jim Dawson? Why didn't you meet him here that night?
I don't know, I just would get to the top of the hill. It was a nice night. I didn't know which way to go, whether to come here or go up there. And then when I went up there, I let the 2 or 3 mates as I had and stopped there. Well, turning out time, 9 o'clock.
Yeah. And you saw Jim Dawson in the light of the headlights? Yeah. Did it occur to you to stop and pick him up?
No, we never just out. That's one of them says that's the bus going on, Tommy, and that were it. We just carried on, never stopped.
And then you went down to the pub in Clitheroe. And what time did you get back to to Bashall Hall?
Oh, it'd be 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock. And
well, they dropped me off at road end up here, at road end, and then we stopped talking a bit.
And then when you got in the hall, what happened then?
No, we were just waiting. He was sat in chair.
Yeah.
And all he said, there hasn't been Teddisford Brig tonight. I said, no, so I had a change. I went up to Red Pump, then went to Clitheroe.
Yeah. And was there anything odd about him then?
No, he was just sat in chair. No.
And did you notice any blood?
I didn't. I noticed now. Never.
Yeah.
If I'd have known how it happened, I'd have out. And I didn't know now. That were it.
Was he the only person up when you came home?
Aye, were.
The other people in the house were in bed?
Aye.
Who was in the house besides him?
They were Lily and Polly and Annie and Albert Pickles.
Yeah. Albert Pickles was who?
Polly's lad.
Yeah, so he was Jim Dawson's nephew.
Aye.
And was it anyone else?
No.
The following morning, what was happening then?
Oh, first as I knew, I think Connie, we used to go out and milk. Then I knew Mrs. Pickles would get up and bring me and Albert a pot of tea up into shipping. And then Annie said something about it, like as Jim's been hit or done something like a lot of blood on where they were set and upstairs on steps. I believe they were more in bed like when they went to work then.
Yes.
On bed sheets.
Yeah. And what were the sisters doing when you got into the kitchen?
Well, they making breakfast. I think one of them had gone to rig Mr. Ormrod. Barrister had that cottage next door.
Yeah.
Gone in and he rings up for doctor and then doctor come and then see what happened. Well, he rings up for police then. It took him a bit to come. They only had a bicycle then at that time.
Yeah. The policeman came from where?
Waddington.
From Waddington. The man they sent to investigate this murder was Wilf Blacker, a detective chief superintendent, and he was something special. He was a man who had one foot in the Victorian times, but also knew the value of forensic science in the investigation of murder. And he came here, fresh really from a triumph in York where he'd solved a murder, probably thinking to himself, I won't be long with this one. But he was wrong. He met, I knew him when he was an old man, and I had the privilege of talking to him, and I taped conversations with him, and this is what Wilf Blacker thought about it.
They were about make-up, you know. They were all of a stubborn type. They wouldn't give anybody away. They'd have gone to the stake before they'd have said a word. You could discover that straight away.
You see, you can be Sherlock Holmes, Poirot, Father Brown, all rolled into one. But the point is, if no one talks to you, there's nothing that you can do about it. So the point was, what had fired this bullet? And typically he had all the places searched, the dikes, the ditches, the farms, the farmyards, and all the people who had firearms had to bring them in, had to have them tested, but nothing came of it at all. So typically Wilf Blacker went to the very top man in the country, Mr. Churchill, the other Mr. Churchill, Robert Churchill, the leading gun expert, and he came up from London to find out exactly what it was that projected this homemade bullet 3.5 inches into the back of James Dawson. Of course, Robert Churchill didn't have much to go on, so he concentrated on the sound of the murder weapon, not a bang, a click, and he came up with the theory that it was an air cane, also known as a poacher's arm. This is an air cane, and the principle of it is quite simple, really. It unscrews here.
Does that have a valve?
Yes, there's a valve in here, and the pressure is built up.
That's what, a sort of reservoir of air, is it?
It is, yes. It goes in here behind, and it's pumped in this way. Then the stirrup is taken off. The barrel is put in position on the end. The end is taken away, so, and then the missile is put into the end in that way, and then it's rammed into position, so. Then, when it's going to be fired, it's cocked in this way. And there you have a click. In fact, Wilf Blacker investigated this, along with Robert Churchill.
How do you aim a thing like that?
Well, it's more of a pointing weapon, really, than an aiming weapon, because, in fact, you can't get it back to your shoulder, and you can't get your eye down to the sight. So I would think that it was probably aimed in this way, and then fired, and the missile came out.
And that was a click?
And that was a click. Wilf Blacker sent his men in to look for an air cane, but, as the newspapers reported, they found nothing. There are several key issues with this murder, and the first one, of course, is the weapon. How was the bullet projected? There are several ways that it could be done. It could be fired from a catapult. It could be fired from the poacher's arm, which was Robert Churchill's theory. Or alternatively, it could be fired in the traditional way. This is a 410 cartridge with the shot in position, and this is a 410 cartridge with the shot taken out. The explosive charge is still there. Now, it is possible to put this kind of a bullet into the end and fire it through a normal 410.
Would there be a lot of guns like that in the area at the time?
Yes, this is a favourite rabbiting gun amongst farmers, along with the 12-bore. And of course, the point must be made that this bullet could also be fired with a 16-bore cartridge and perhaps a 12-bore. not very accurately, and not very accurately in here at any distance, but if it hit the victim, it would be capable of doing some damage, far more damage than the ordinary cartridge could do at a distance. Now the question the distance the bullet travelled came up at the inquest. James Dawson told the police that it was 30 yards. A very good shot indeed, if it was an air cane. An expert said that if it had been a 410 shotgun, at that distance, the bullet would have blown his shoulder off. Now this is where the chap said, where Jim Dawson said that he was shot, just here. The spot where he heard the click is about here. He then, so he says, walked up this lane with this great gaping wound in his back. Without knowing it, he walked on his way home. Past the Simpson farm, which is there, on the left. Round here to the right. And then to the left down here, down this track, towards Bashall Hall Farm. And according to my clock on this car, that is nearly half a mile. Wilf Blacker said that it wasn't possible to do this, and quite honestly, I agree with him. I think it's too far to walk with such a wound.
You know what I think about when I go early morning jogging? That lovely cup of Nescafe when I get back. Nescafe tastes specially good because it's a blend of 3 types of the finest coffee beans in the world. About this many in every cup. Of course, I don't know what the others think about.
Gareth, Nescafe, your place or mine?
Nescafe? What a saintly idea.
Nescafe. There's no better tasting coffee.
Thanks, Mum. Look at Goldilocks, just splashing about as though she owns the place. And bathing with my Infocare. I think she had a delicate skin or something. Yeah, Mum, what about my hair? That's nice. I do like a shampoo with Infocare, no rinsing, and it doesn't irritate one little bit. Just as well when you're taking a bath with her.
Infocare from Milton. The gentle baby bath that's not just for babies.
Pick up a penguin, a lovely big penguin. When you pick up a penguin, there's so much more to enjoy. It's bigger, so chocolatey, delicious, filling too. When you feel a little peckish, what's bigger and best for you? A penguin. So pick up a penguin. When you feel a little peckish, pick up a penguin.
We created Imperial Leather to be quite unique. We even made our illustrious label a pedestal on which the soap can rest, to keep your bathside free of blemishes. It seems, however, that some of you are still placing Imperial Leather label upwards on display to the world. Is this some form of inverted snobbery? Imperial Leather rests on its name.
Travelling back on the tube from work, and I looked around and people had dandruff on their shoulders, and I knew that mine looked just like theirs, so I thought I must do something about it. I didn't like to talk to anybody about it, and finally I had a word with my husband, and I tried masses of other shampoos, But he suggested I try Head and Shoulders. So I did, and it worked. My dandruff cleared up, and my hair just feels great.
Most people find Head and Shoulders clears dandruff others leave behind. Use it regularly.